Welcome to today's podcast. What I really wanted to talk about today is all about finding happiness, because for sometimes I feel like when you've gone through trauma or something like that, it's very, very important to find happiness, because what I've noticed is a lot of times I feel like my mood is always in that like neutral slash sort of down a little bit. Maybe that also explains why I always like to spend money, because it's like I'm craving for that little bit of a dopamine hit, and maybe that's why addiction can be so dangerous for people. Even though a lot of times you will see like a lot of things are happy, but that's also because I just want to share happy stuff. Like, I don't want to share unhappy things, because I feel like it's very important to bring more joy on the internet. So that's probably why I love sharing happy things. But that doesn't mean my mood is always like really, really happy. But there's always going to be times where I just feel a little down. And what I've noticed is a lot of times in the evening, my mood will start going down a little, and I feel like I need some kind of dopamine hit to kind of like raise my mood a little. So it includes like maybe a conversation, because you always hear me say, I just want to talk, I just want to talk. It really is like that talking makes me feel really good. Like, it's kind of like what really gives me that like that dopamine hit. It's like what brings me kind of happiness is just talking. So I've always just really craved that in-depth conversation in the afternoon and night. Like, during the day it's not as big of a deal, because my mood is sort of like better during the day, but I find that it's almost like when the sun sets, it's when the mood kind of goes down a little, and it's hard to find a good balance sometimes, because I feel like, I want to do something, and then it's like, it's like hard to keep me feeling good and happy by just being on my own, if you know what I mean. Like, sometimes I'll just like watching my favorite shows and stuff, or doing my thing doesn't feel as good to do at that time of the day compared to other times of the day. And also I find that unless I have like a conversation or something, there just feels like something's missing. And a lot of times I'll think too, why do we feel like that? Like, I always like to really kind of like understand our brains and understand what is going on behind the scenes, so that I'm not just like, I'm just like that. Because I find it very interesting. It's like, why do we feel sad at certain times of the day, or why is it that we almost like have this like just lower mood for sometimes, like especially for people who've gone through like a lot of stressful events? Like, why is it that our moods are just sometimes slightly lower than average? And I feel like maybe it has something to do with our like oversensitive brains. We've experienced like bad things, so we kind of maybe have this almost like this expectation, like something's gonna go wrong or something. Like, you're always in that tense mode, a fearful mode, where you're like expecting the other shoe to drop, or you're just expecting. It's like, I feel like it comes down to maybe grief, where it just feels like you just have this lingering grief inside you. It's almost like this feeling that you can't get rid of. It's just always there. You're always worried that you're afraid that you're going to be alone, or you're afraid that you just have nobody to talk to, or something like that, where it just feels like, I always think of those feelings as like, it always originates, yes, it always seems to originate in the stomach, which is really interesting, because when you think of, our emotions, it should be coming from the mind or something, but for me, I've always had those feelings in the stomach. So it feels like as soon as like the time comes where my happiness level goes down, it's like the stomach feeling I feel, rather than anything in my brain or anything that I can notice in my head. It really feels like a stomach feeling. It's like, that feeling when it's like butterflies kind of feeling, where you're like really, really anxious and you feel that sickly feeling in the stomach, but it's a little bit different, because it's not like the same as like being nervous. It's just like this empty kind of maybe feeling in your stomach. And I found that various live events will make it worse. Like sometimes hearing about the loss of someone, even if someone I don't know, sometimes can be really difficult. It could be like losing a pet or losing loved ones or anything like that. Just seems to really affect us, like affected me really badly. It feels like I just had this hypersensitivity to loss. And that's what's really interesting with, like, I've noticed with even my friends who've gone through traumatic experiences, maybe with losses and things like that, it feels like they're always in that little bit of a sad mood, if you know what I mean. Like, and not like in a bad way, but just feels like their neutral, like, levels of happiness is below 50%. Let's say 50% is the normal, like usually we think of ourselves as like, oh, we're good, we're not like overly excited, but we're not overly depressed. It feels like normally we think of ourselves at the 50%, right? But for people who have gone through like very traumatic experience, it feels like sometimes we're at 40%, or maybe depending on the situation, it could be higher or lower. Maybe sometimes you'll feel extra like just happy and stuff when something happens, like something good. But then when that thing goes away, it goes down to 30%. So that's also what I've noticed, is that whenever I go through something really, really happy, I'm feeling like overly excited, happy, and everything, like almost like at 110%, if you know what I mean. I'd be really happy, but then again, I'm sorry, I just have to like edit the freaking thing. Okay, so and then what I notice is I just end up feeling even worse than before when that good thing finishes, if you know what I mean. Like, it could be just like an event or something that I'm really looking forward to, or meeting someone that I'm really excited about. It could be any of those things that I get so happy and excited over, but as soon as that event is over, then I feel like almost plummet into this great depression, if that makes sense. So I'm wondering, like, what can we do? Because it feels like when we have that feeling, I just feel like, oh, I gotta like lift my mood up. I have to do something. So what I tend to do is spend money. Like, I've gone better these days from spending like a huge amount of money on like expensive items to just buying something small, or sometimes these days I'm not doing that. I'm actually doing something else that makes me really excited, which I'll like get to later. But what I've noticed is that that's when I think about why I spend a lot of money, I think that's why, because I just feel this need to have excitement. And interestingly, these days, what I've noticed is that for the past 2 weeks, I've actually been trying not to spend money, and it works even when I'm just going out to the shops and taking a look at the decor. That actually gives me the same level of happiness. Like, I feel like I don't need to buy anything to get that sense of happiness. What happens is I would be browsing a shop like TK Maxx, and I'm looking at the decor and I'm looking at it, and in my mind I'm imagining, like, for example, right now the Christmas decor is all up, so I'm looking at all these like really, really cozy decor, and I'm imagining like decorating the house in this really cozy way with the gingerbread and everything, and that just brings me this joy and happiness in my stomach kind of thing. But what happens is, during those holiday times, it's also a time where you feel like this deep-rooted sadness. It's like, it feels like any event will make that sadness feel worse, if you know what I mean. It's almost like you're just reminded of certain losses and certain, like, you know, it could be someone very important to you that's passed away. They just really, really, that event just really triggers that kind of feeling. So that's probably why I really love watching vlogs, like people just having fun, because it brings me happiness in this way that I can't express. Like, I know it's interesting because I know that when they're having these fun moments on camera, I know that their life is probably not, you know, 100% perfect. They probably have downtime, and they probably have times where they feel sad, but they're sharing that happy moment, and it just makes me so happy to watch that. Probably the reason why I love to share these funny conversations we have. It's not like every day we're always so happy and having these fun conversations, but it just, like, those type of conversation just makes me so happy, and I just want to share it. And that's probably why you see just nothing but like these joyful conversations, because that's what I would want to watch, and that's why I share them. But in reality, like, you know, half the time our conversation may just be really, really like low energy, and it could be just like, it could just like the whole conversation could be us arguing over why can't we talk more, like, oh, can't you just say something, or like, you know, it could be just like about not enough talking. That could be, and I wouldn't like want to share that kind of stuff all the time. Maybe a little bit, like, something, it's a funny conversation, but I tend to just really want to share the happy moments, just because I know it's something that would lift my mood up. But like, that's in a way that's kind of like also can be misleading, because you might just look at someone's life and think everything's perfect. You might watch them have these great fun conversations, expect that that's just what it's like all the time, but in reality we do have like, you know, disagreements and all that. It's like everything else, you know, it's like life is not just one-sided, but it's really what we choose to share on camera. Like, I want to share the happiest moments, or the moments that matter a lot. Like, I don't want to focus on the negative. That's why I don't put on like a lot of negative stuff on my channel. But you know, in a way, maybe it could make someone feel like, oh, my life is too perfect. But in reality, I have to keep changing the lighting for the camera. I'm sorry, because the sun keeps going down and up and down and up. But in reality, it's like, there's definitely not just all happy moments in life, but it's just really what I'm willing to share. But what I really do want to share is just how to have that happiness, because it's so important to me. Like, to me, there's nothing more important than helping people find true happiness, because that's what I always wanted. And I remember in the past I used to watch a lot of like how to find happiness videos, and people would just say, oh, like, just think very positive, or look at the bright side, or react well to the situation, you know, those kind of things I really appreciate. But at the same time, I'm just always confused about how to do that, because I feel like if I could think positive when I'm not, I would do that, because there's no way I would choose to want to feel unhappy, that I would choose to be sad, just that because I want so badly to feel happy. But it's more like I just don't know how at that moment. It's like, what can I do to help my brain overcome whatever sadness it's feeling? And I've learned that a lot of times going through grief and things like that, it's not something you can just get rid of. It really is a process that you have to work through and give yourself time. Like, if you've just lost someone important, or even a very important pet or something, it's very important to know that you're not going to like just get out of that and feel happy the next day. So I find it so important to allow yourself the time to feel that sadness and feel the grief that you might feel. It could even be something as small as like fulfilling a goal that you always wanted, but now that you've fulfilled it, if you maybe you feel a little lost, like, where do I go now? I've just done this thing that I wanted to for so long, and suddenly you're left feeling empty because like, I've done it. And a lot of times that can, you know, it's like when you're having too much fun, like for example, maybe traveling. You've always wanted to go to a certain place, like you're excited to travel to a new place, and then when you go and you have like the best time ever, and then when the trip finishes, you get that sad feeling. It's like it's over and you just feel the grief. Same kind of thing. I feel like even though the grief can be intense, I do still feel like it's very important to experience those things, because like the joy that you feel during the time is just indescribable. Like, I just cannot even describe how good it feels to like experience these new things. But at the same time, I feel like we need to really know how to deal with that grief, because we don't want to just like be completely like overwhelmed with like sadness once an exciting event is over. It's like, oh, how do we deal with that? And then we just kind of, maybe sometimes we'll just go overboard with like maybe buying something or addiction or something like that. It can be very dangerous if we don't know how to like, what's the word? If we don't know how to like handle that kind of grief. And it really feels like a huge part of the depression or the sadness I feel has to do with like a grieving kind of feeling. It almost feels like I'm anticipating a loss, where even when it's not happening, I feel like it's just something that's always on my mind, and it's like my stomach seems to be expecting it. And a lot of times it's also, it'll cause certain anxiety inducing feelings, like you might worry a lot about close family members. Like I found that because I was so worried about things like this, I always panicked over little things, like, or any symptom that could be an illness or anything like that, that would really affect me. Like, I would just be worried over little things rather than just enjoying every day. Because I still remember when Lucas was born, he was really, really little, and for a long time, maybe a year, I spent the whole year feeling really depressed because I just was so worried about something that could go wrong. I couldn't enjoy any time at all during the first year of parenthood because I just kept feeling like something was going to go wrong. It's like, oh, my mind was in overdrive, in worry and panic over illnesses, over SIDS, over anything that you can possibly imagine. It was so filled with so much worry and sadness that it was very difficult to enjoy anything. So that's very important, to just be able to work through that grief. And what I find that helps me is to really allow myself to feel that sadness rather than trying to distract myself with something and try to like get rid of it, because what ends up happening is that you get rid of it to a point where you might feel numb to it, but it's always there and it'll come back worse than before, which is something I've noticed, that if I'm feeling any kind of grief, what I've really noticed was that I'll go to bed feeling like, semi-okay, but when I wake up in the morning, it's almost like this moment I wake up and everything is completely fine and I feel happy, good, content, and then suddenly my memory will flash back to what happened. And it's like everything's like 3,000 times worse than before. Suddenly it just feels like my mood plummets to the bottom. And it's like, how do I deal with that? Because you don't want to feel worse in the morning when, compared to when you went to sleep, right? That always scared me, that, I could just wake up feeling even worse than I do now. Like when you're going to bed, you're already feeling really sad. You don't want to feel even worse when you wake up. And that's when I feel like, if the more you try to suppress it, especially at night, the worse it becomes in the morning. So fully allowing myself to feel that grief, that sadness, always helps me more in the next day and stuff. So I know it's very tempting to just want to do something to distract you and to not feel it, but honestly, I do feel like the body needs to process that sadness, and it's like it can't move on until you allow yourself to feel that way. And it's very easy to just want to never look at something that will remind you of this loss or something like that, but it really will just stay at the back of your mind. It'll just come out worse than before sometimes. So that's what I've noticed. And the long journey to happiness has made me realize that sometimes I have to really work hard to enjoy the progress of something rather than looking at an end result. Because a lot of times I'll feel like, I know I've thought before, once I move to a new house, I'm going to be happy. Once I get a bigger garden, I'm going to be happy. Once I buy this, I'm going to be happy. Once, everything comes with the once and then you think once I get this, I'll be happy. But what ends up happening, at least to my, in my experience, is that once it happens, you do get happy, but that happiness is short-lived, because it's just like that dopamine hit when you buy something you always wanted. That's exciting for a day, and then you go back to neutral. So that's kind of what happens when, even for big things, because you just get used to it. It's like if you think, I'm only going to be happy when I get this new thing, or when I move to a new house that's bigger, or whatever you want. What ends up happening is that, yes, you will feel really happy in the beginning, but then again, after a while, your body gets used to it and it gets cut back to how it was. So that's the problem, is that when you just think, I'm only going to be happy if I get this. So what I try to do is I force myself to really enjoy or think about what's really fun about how I'm getting there, rather than just the end result. So right now, I'm trying to think, writing my story and everything like that. I'm trying to figure out, this is the fun part. This getting there will be the fun part, because once I'm there, it's it'll be feeling like a great accomplishment, but I don't know how long it's gonna last. So it's very important for me to enjoy the progress, the process, whatever the word is, process, yeah. Just enjoy getting to that point. And so that's why I've been really trying to document more of just my progress. And it feels like, it's just imagining. I try to vividly imagine things that makes me feel excited. That also really helps. It's similar to window shopping in a way, that is I used to not get much joy out of window shopping, but these days I do. I actually find that just by going and looking at things in the shop, I actually feel happy without needing to actually buy it, which is really interesting, because before I felt like it was just depressing to look at things without needing to buy it. But now I can kind of use my active and imagination a little bit more and just imagine myself having that or something, because I know in the past I've always felt really cozy and happy going to home decor stores, because I'm just imagining my home filled with those decor. It just makes me feel so cozy and wonderful, and it's that's a really fun thing to do, and I enjoy it, because that going to these places don't you usually don't cost me much unless I go crazy or go like, oh, I just need to buy a new bed or something like that, because then that would cost a lot. But usually it's fun to go there, so I don't see any problem with going to places that make you feel a bit of joyful feeling. Because for me, it's always like, I just feel so much joy when I watch someone live, like have happy interactions. That really brings me joy. And I also feel really happy looking at really cozy decor. That also brings me joy. Like, what brings you joy might be completely different, but that's just something that really makes me feel happy, and I love looking at it. So I've been kind of doing that instead of like doing my usual spending a huge amount of money, because right now I feel like right now I'm trying to save for a big project of mine, which is my book that I want to publish. I need a lot of money for like things like narrating, and also by editing. All that stuff needs money. So I'm actually, for the first time, really working very hard to save. And for the first time for like almost 2 weeks now, I think it's over 2 weeks, like almost 2 weeks, I've not really spent any money except for like the food that I eat and like necessities that I need. I actually haven't really spent money on anything that usually I would spend on for like just random stuff, like buy random stuff like plants or I don't know, stickers or decorations and stuff. I usually would buy a lot of those just for little bits of joy, and now I'm actually finding it fun to just look at the stores. It's like I've saved maybe $400 this 2 weeks. It's crazy. And what I find is having a project that I'm working on also helps, because I've always found that when I'm creating, I tend to spend less. Although sometimes the hard part is being motivated to create, because it's not every time that you're motivated to create. Sometimes I just don't feel like doing it. Like when I'm drawing, I always find that I'm so happy, but sometimes I'll just be in a block and I just can't figure out what to draw, or I just can't put my finger down what it is. I just can't really seem to be motivated to start, and that's a big problem. It's like right now, because I'm writing, I'm also spending a lot of time reading over what I write, and that's helping me with just figuring out what I can do. So I'm gonna have to figure out what I'll do after I finish writing, because that's going to be very interesting. I'm gonna have to figure out what I do during the time I gotta, like, when I finish writing to the time I'm gonna save up enough money, because that's gonna be an interesting time where I'll have nothing to do. Let's hope I don't spend that time. But for so far, I'm absolutely shocked with how well I'm doing with spending, and that's really great for me. So anyway, back to happiness. I feel like a lot of times there's little things in life that I try to remember that will just bring these little joys of happiness, and I try to always remember them. So it's like sometimes you'll find, what I've noticed is, when you don't think about it, time can just go really quickly, and soon like another day pass. But if I really sit down and think about every little detail, I feel like it almost slows down the time a little. I don't know if that's ever happened to you, but sometimes when I feel like time is going too fast and the years are slipping away from me, because as you get older, you do find that the days go quicker. And I'll just try to like really try to remember the little details of every little thing, and it kind of almost slows the time down. It's really weird in that way. And what I like to do is I just try to like really, like, I'm thinking of the word dwell, but dwell is usually for a negative thing, so it's not dwell, whatever it is. It's like I'm trying to like sit in that feeling of when I'm enjoying something little. Like, for example, for me, the things that make me very happy, my blah, blah, it's like, I can't speak, that's what makes me happy. No, it doesn't. Anyway, coffee in the morning makes me so happy. That's one of my most joyful things in the morning, and I try to do that slowly. Unless Lucas wants the coffee that I'm drinking, then I'll be like, it'll be a different story. But usually I'm trying to slowly enjoy it, so I just have a little more time to appreciate that little bit of a joyous occasion in the morning. And for me, one of my favorite things to do is riding the trains, because it feels so warm and lovely. It's because it's very reminds me of a childhood memory with my grandfather. It just feels so nice and just makes me so happy. So I try to do that every day and just get that feeling of that little bit of joy. And it's not something that's like, it's not going to cost too much. It's just something that I can do that makes me happy. I just try to really focus on that little bit of thing that really makes me happy. And I also noticed there are two very important things that affect my mood a lot. And the number one thing is sleep, because I know that when I don't get very good sleep, my mood the next day plummets to a point where I can't even imagine. Like, there were 2 days I remember where I didn't sleep at all. Like, it was just something happened. Like, I think it was because Lucas was sick or something. It's just, I couldn't sleep. Maybe I had 1 or 2 hours of sleep, and the next day I felt like death. Like, literally, I felt like death, as in, not death as in tired, but death as in my mood was so bad. It was just like, I just felt this overwhelming, like, cloud over me. I can describe it as just feeling, like, doomed. Like, it's almost like this feeling where it's the end of the world, and I just can't see any hope. And that's kind of, like, how I feel when I don't get any sleep. So, when I get, like, less sleep than usual, it's more like, oh, I just feel really tired and grumpy. But when I don't get sleep at all, that's when I notice, okay, my mood is dangerously low. So it's very important. But sleep is also very tricky, because you'll find that the more stressed you are, the less it is easy to sleep. And a lot of times you might just be lying in bed and you want to sleep, but you can't. So what I've noticed is going to bed, not forcing yourself to sleep, is the key. Like, you have to just think of something that's kind of almost like relaxing. Like, I like to think of my dreams as this continuation of a TV show or something, where I'm just like going to bed thinking about, like, how can I continue my dream? Like, where did I get up to last time? And I'm kind of imagining things, and then soon I'll fall asleep. That's how I deal with, like, sleep. Also, by thinking of just something happy, not something that's too exciting, because excitement is kind of similar to like nervousness. It gives the same energy where you'll feel like you can't sleep. So sometimes just reading something really, really, like, not too exciting, but not too boring either, because you don't want to be just like snapping out of what you're reading and not know what you're reading because it's too boring. But just reading something neutral can be very relaxing, and listening to something, like, I find it very cool watching videos, certain videos like The Coldest Place on Earth or camping videos. Those are always really cozy and helps me get into that sleepy mode, whereas something too scary might not work, or something that's going to make me feel really excited also won't work. So those are just sleep tips that I have for, like, better sleep. And also, I find this really, really weird, but if I go to bed a lot later than usual, my brain kind of goes into this overdrive stress mode, and I can't fall asleep. So, like, let's say my usual bedtime is 11:30, and normally I will go to bed at maybe 11:40, and that's fine. But I notice as soon as I go to bed at 12 o'clock, like midnight, oh god, it's like my brain is suddenly overwhelmed, and it knows that it's later than usual, and then for some reason I spend the next 2 hours trying to sleep, but I can't. So I know, okay, I can't go to bed too late. Even if I go to bed 10 or 15 minutes earlier, it helps me realize, okay, I still have time, and then it makes me fall asleep much easier. So sleeping is so tricky, because the brain is just like, oh, I just can't sleep. It's like, it feels like the brain is like, I'm just not gonna sleep. If you want me to sleep, I'm not doing it. Just like, you can't tell me what to do, sort of thing. So anyway, I got interrupted by a phone call, as usual. This always happens to me when I'm filming a video. So besides what we talked about just now, which is the great way to find happiness is having a good sleep, the other very, very important thing that I find that I always really need is sunlight. For some reason, sunlight, it just makes you feel so, so good. Especially, like, I'll feel that instantly. Like, I'll be going out, right? And I'll be outside doing random stuff. I'll come in the house, and there's, like, the blinds are closed, and I just feel so low. Like, my mood just feels so low. And I open the blinds up, the light hits me, and all of a sudden I feel much happier instantly. It's crazy. Like, instantly I just feel happier. And I just feel like being outside is, like, so important, because the sunlight, it's like, especially first thing in the morning, I find the sunlight to be crucial for mood. So whenever I get hit by the sun right away, like, I'll just feel this happiness that I cannot even describe. If I go through days without even being in the sun at all, then I will definitely feel that thick fog blanketing my mind, and I feel like I'm suddenly good at explaining myself because I've been writing. It's so funny. So yeah, that thick fog seems to always come when I spend days indoors without even feeling the sunlight at all, and that's really, really just just can be such a like a mood killer. So that's one thing I really do recommend, even though I know sometimes it's extra hard because there are some places that are very cold, and I know that winters are just so filled with freezing coldness that going out is probably going to be a lot more trouble than it's worth, and you've got the snow and everything. I understand that, but just to do the best you can, I guess, is the only thing you can really do. It's just whatever that makes you feel that little bit of joy and happiness is what I would just suggest for you to do, just because of how important it is just to get that natural like happiness. It's like a natural little happiness pill, if you know what I mean. Like, it's just so important because there's just things that basic needs that we really need met. Really, that just sounded really weird. I was like, so much for me trying to get my words together. So yeah, like, you'll find that our basic needs are so important, and that also goes with eating good food. And like, you'll find that eating certain foods will really help elevate your mood, and also exercises could help. Like, one of the things that I find very interesting is that if I'm really stressed out and I'm like moving my body very quickly, that helps me a lot. Like, if I'm feeling the tense energy, I have to really like tense up, release that energy, and that really does help. It's something physical you can do that just helps a lot. Like, instead of just sitting there and it's like letting the energy, nervous energy take over, like if I just squeeze as hard as possible and release, that almost instantly helps me to sleep. Also, I've noticed when I'm really, really stressed out, like trying to run in the spot or just do something that's very tense for a few minutes, or like just even a minute, will help a lot. It's like instantly I'll feel like my tense energy goes down. And I remember hearing that as a thing that you can try to like just get calm down from like nerves, and that really helps, because I find that with less nervous energy you get better sleep, and when you get better sleep you have a happier mood. I'll always find that when I don't sleep well is when my mood gets even worse, and especially it's so terrifying that on the days that I get no sleep I suddenly feel like the world is over. Like, it's so weird that it's a feeling that originates again in the stomach for me. It's never like in the mind, it's just in the stomach, and it feels like nothing at all has triggered anything of reason why I'm feeling like that, but it just is because of the lack of sleep. So I do know that lack of sleep can just cause like this big feeling of sadness without even trying. So I know it's hard, like especially if you have kids. I understand how hard it is to get proper sleep. It could be maybe that's also one of the main reasons why people have so much problem with depression after having kids, is because of that lack of sleep, and that it's really the lack of like a consistent like sleep where you're not waking up every 30 minutes, because I find when you have broken sleep it just doesn't work as well. So I know that's not something we can control, and just do our best. So that's the only thing we can do, but just like having good sleep habits really helping me. So that's one thing. Like, feeling happy is just something I just feel like it's everyone just wants to feel happy, but it's not something that's easy, because a lot of times it feels like it's out of our control. And I've had to really understand that the hard way, because a lot of times I just found myself stressing for so long, for so many years. That's when I've really decided that I had to do something. I do take medication for my anxiety and depression, which I feel like has helped. Like, I don't know how much it helps, but I do know that it's less intense than it used to be. Like, I'll react slightly better to certain situations compared to before I was on this medication. So that really like helped me kind of elevate my mood a bit, because I know in the past if I couldn't sleep one night, oh my god, it's like the world is ending. Like, I just suddenly feel like I've lost all control, and then for the next week I would be impossible for me to even sleep because I'll be so stressed about it. Now it's more like, oh, I know, like, I understand it's something that's gonna like maybe a bit hard for a few days, and then my mind is not as nervous, so that really helps. And one of the things that really triggers my anxiety is anything to do with sickness in that way, that that type of sickness. It's like, as soon as like I hear of someone with that sickness, especially if I've like been in contact with them, I will freak out, and for like a whole week I'll just feel like it's so scary. Like I'll feel like I just can't get out of this terror, like this, and it almost feels like nothing in the world can stop that fear, because my mind knows no logic, it just knows the fear. So it's really difficult when I go through that, and I just have to realize that once this time period is over, everything's gonna get better. So just do my best, and yeah, that's just have to get through those moments. And I try to think of hopeful moments in the future when, like, I'll just imagine myself in the future kind of like in a much better, happy place, like everyone's healthy. I just try to remember and imagine that during the time when I'm feeling so hopeless. That really helps me, because the worst thing you can do is just feel like you're in a place that's hopeless, because you want to feel hope. And that's my favorite thing, is like trying to find that little bit of hope during the dark times is very helpful. I just really love that. And of course, I do think that it's very important to have a purpose. Finding a purpose for me has been life-changing for me, because I feel like with a purpose, I am not just I'm not just like, oh, looking for this temporary high or something like that. Like having a purpose, like for example, for me, it's my videos and everything that I do. It really gives me this motivation, this energy to life that I can't imagine having before. And it's just so exciting, because I wake up so excited to get out of bed, because I'm wondering like, oh, what can I do today to like fulfill that, like my purpose. It's really fun. Instead of just like looking always for like some external thing that makes me happy, having this purpose is like an internal kind of happiness, or like just something that lifts my mood, and it's something that I just love working on. And I find that it really gives me that motivation every single day. Like it's one of the greatest things ever to actually want to wake up, because like when you wake up and immediately you're like, oh, I just want to get up and write my story, I just want to keep writing where I got up to. That's so exciting. It's so exciting. So I really do recommend for you to do something for yourself that's really important, that's like gives you a sense of purpose, that's just gives you like a reason to get up. That's so important. And even if you're stuck doing things you hate at the moment, at least doing that little thing could help you like figure out what you want to do maybe in the future or something like that. So that's all I can think of that really is just ways to find happiness. I'm very curious. One of the things like I really do want to do is to just find other people's secret to happiness, because to me it's very important. I love knowing how other people find happiness. Everyone's different, you know, we all find happiness in different ways. So that's something I'm very curious about. Please share with me, how do you find happiness? I would love to hear. What do you do? What are some of the things that you do that makes you just feel that excitement and joy in life? I would love to hear from you. So if you want to come on the podcast and talk with me about it, I would love that too. So hit me up with emails or whatever it is. I'll chat to you soon, and hope you have a wonderful day.